sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
You know, sometimes I feel like celebrity lives are like reality TV, but we all get to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
like we're all invested even if we don't want to be.
Right. Exactly. And today we're taking a deep dive into a situation where that public eye, it might actually be affecting a family in a real way.
Okay, yeah. When kids are involved, it's definitely not just entertainment anymore. The stakes are so much higher.
So we're talking Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Our source is this exclusive from Us Weekly that came out pretty recently, on March 18th, actually, 2025. And they're saying Kim is really thinking about filing for full custody of all 4 of their kids.
Wow. And this is, important to remember. This isn't just your typical celebrity divorce. This case could actually have some legal stuff that goes way beyond just this one family.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What makes this case stand out so much?
Well, I think it's easy to get caught up in the gossip of it all. Who's right, who's wrong. But this situation goes deeper than that. Kanye's been doing some things lately, saying things, putting stuff out there. And it's raising concerns about whether he's stable, and how all of this might be affecting his kids.
And Us Weekly is saying Kim's not trying to punish Kanye by going for full custody. It's more about protecting her kids.
Exactly. They're saying she's really concerned about their well-being.
Right. Makes sense. And Kim's been pretty open about how tough it is to co-parent with Kanye. She even called it like really effing hard in an interview a while back.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was on a podcast back in 2022.
So this isn't some sudden thing. It sounds like things have been building up for a while now.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that every custody case has its own specifics. But, when one parent is doing things that raise red flags, courts usually look really closely at what that might mean for the kids.
So can we go through some of the things Kanye has done recently that might be a problem legally?
Of course. So one example that the US Weekly article talks about is Kanye releasing a song with his daughter Northwest singing on it, which, lots of people are talking about it because it seems like Kim wasn't okay with it being released.
Wait, so Kanye used his daughter's voice in a song and didn't even get Kim's permission. Isn't that a legal issue?
It could be, yeah. This is where it gets kind of interesting legally. So first you have to think about North's consent. She's still a minor, which means legally she might not be old enough to really understand and agree to having her voice used in a song that's going to be sold and stuff.
So even if Kanye thought it was, a cute dad-daughter thing, there could be laws about child performers that apply here.
Exactly. And there's another layer to this. Did you know Northwest's name is actually trademarked?
Whoa. Seriously, you can trademark a kid's name. What does that even mean?
Basically, it means her name is legally protected, like it's intellectual property. So if you use her name or her picture or anything to make money, even in a song, it could be breaking the law. And because she's not an adult yet, it gets even more complicated.
So even if Kanye says, hey, I was just being a proud dad, the fact that he used her voice and her name without thinking about the legal side of things, that could be a real problem.
You got it. And this is where the courts would really get into the details. Did Kanye go through the right legal steps to use North's voice and name? Did Kim, as the other parent, say no? These are all questions that could come up if this ends up in court.
Wow. Okay. So this song isn't just a family fight.
Yeah.
It could actually have some serious legal consequences.
For sure. And keep in mind, this is just one example. The article mentions other stuff Kanye's done that might be looked at if there's a custody evaluation.
So while this is all happening out in the open, Kim's trying to keep her kids away from the drama. Us Weekly even quoted her saying she's holding on by a thread to protect them from all the craziness.
Which I think a lot of parents can relate to, whether you're famous or not, trying to keep things normal for your kids when everything's falling apart. It's super hard.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with a divorce that's this public and messy.
And the digital age makes it even harder. Think about it. Before it was mostly just tabloids. But now with social media, everything gets blown up and everyone's got an opinion.
It's like having your personal life on display for the whole world.
And for kids, that can be really tough to deal with.
But Kanye seems to see things differently.
Yeah.
The article says he thinks he still has good parenting advice for Kim.
Yeah, and he actually said that he has to, throw his version into the parenting curriculum, which honestly kind of shows a big problem with co-parenting in these situations.
How so?
I mean, think about it. Can you really co-parent if one person thinks their way is always the right way? It just creates this imbalance and makes it almost impossible to work together.
That's a really good point. It's like, how do you agree on anything if one person thinks they have all the answers?
Exactly. And that kind of thing can happen in any co-parenting situation. famous or not.
You just hit on something I think a lot of our listeners can relate to. We've all had those disagreements with co-parents or exes, even with family sometimes, about how to raise kids. But when it's all happening in public, it's like the pressure gets turned way up.
Oh, for sure. And in this case, it's not just the parents who are affected. Their kids are growing up with all of this being talked about and analyzed.
Makes you wonder what kind of effect it'll have on them in the long run.
Definitely. And that brings up a bigger question about fame and family and privacy in this digital age. But before we get into all of that, let's look at some other important parts of this case.
So we're seeing how this is way more than your average Hollywood breakup. It's like parenting and personality and the law all crashing together, right out in the open.
Exactly. We can't forget that with any custody battle, the court's main focus is always what's best for the kids.
I get that. But how do you even figure that out when you have famous parents and everyone's watching and maybe they don't agree on how to raise the kids?
It's definitely not easy. The court has to look at so many things, like how Kanye's acting and if that's affecting the kids, and how well Kim can provide a stable home for them, and any signs that the kids are being hurt or might get hurt.
And in this case, you've got this extra layer of Kanye being so public with his life and saying some pretty wild stuff sometimes. How does that play into it all?
It adds a whole other level of scrutiny, for sure. The court would have to figure out if the stuff Kanye says in public matches up with how he acts in private, and if that behavior is putting his kids at risk.
It's almost like there's no separation between Kanye's personal life and his public image.
You're right. And that's something we're seeing a lot more of now with social media. It makes you think about where the line is between freedom of speech and how what you say might affect other people, especially kids.
It really does make you wonder what this case could mean for other famous families going through something similar. But even beyond that, for anyone trying to co-parent in this digital age,
that's a really important point. This whole situation shows us that what we do online matters. The things we post, the statements we make, how we act in public, it all has consequences, especially when kids are involved.
That's a heavy thought. And it's not just about the immediate impact either. Think about how all of this will affect those kids down the road. Growing up with their parents' divorce all over the news and social media, that's got to leave some kind of mark.
Absolutely. And it's different for each kid. You know, North is already kind of in the spotlight. Then you have her younger siblings who are still figuring out the world.
It's just a lot to handle for anyone, let alone little kids.
And
even with everything being so public, the U.S. Weekly article talks about how Kim's trying to shield her kids from the drama. It even says she's making a real effort to seem happy for them, even when she's struggling.
That's something a lot of parents do, especially during a separation or divorce. Try and protect your kids from the hard stuff while you're going through your own emotional roller coaster. It's a tough balancing act.
Makes you wonder how long someone can keep that up before they break down.
Yeah, and it raises questions about the long-term effects of all that emotional baggage. You know, therapists and child development experts talk about this a lot. Kids pick up on things. Even if they don't fully understand what's going on, they can feel when something's not right.
So even if Kim's doing her best to protect them, her kids might still be sensing all the tension and stress underneath.
It's definitely possible. And that's why it's so important to be open and honest with your kids. Of course, in a way they can understand. Even if you're trying to keep the details of a tough situation away from them, it's crucial to make sure they feel safe to talk about their feelings.
That makes a lot of sense. But going back to the legal side of things, what could happen if Kim decides to actually file for full custody?
Well, it could turn into a really long court battle, with both sides bringing in evidence and arguments to support their case. And then the court would have to decide what they think is in the best interests of the kids.
And because this involves celebrities, is there a chance that the public will actually get to see how all of that plays out in court?
Yeah, it's possible. Cases like this get a lot of media attention. And while some parts might be kept private to protect the kids' privacy, there's always a chance that some details will get out.
So even if Kim and Kanye try to keep things quiet, this whole situation might just keep playing out in public.
That's definitely a possibility. And it shows how hard it is to have any privacy these days, especially if you're famous. We've talked a lot about the legal stuff and the emotional stuff, but what about the money? I bet there's a lot on the line there too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Kim and Kanye have built this massive empire together.
Yeah.
So any kind of divorce settlement is going to involve splitting up all those assets.
Right.
And then there's child support on top of that.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
So usually courts look at things like how much each parent makes and what the kids need and how much time they spend with each parent. But when you have a divorce with a ton of money involved, it gets really complicated because there are so many assets and income can change so much.
So even if Kim gets full custody, Kanye would still have to pay child support.
Most likely, yeah. The court wants to make sure the kids are taken care of financially, no matter who they live with.
It makes you think about how all of this will affect their businesses and their brands, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Celebrity divorces can be a PR nightmare, and it can hurt endorsements and business deals and how the public sees them. It'll be interesting to see how Kim and Kanye handle that side of things.
Well, like this whole case is a chain reaction. One thing leads to another, and the effects go way beyond just their family.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even though this is a celebrity case, the issues they're dealing with are things that a lot of families go through. The challenges of co-parenting, the impact of divorce on kids, and how technology is changing everything about our lives.
Yeah, it really is a lot. And honestly, with all this talk about lawyers and money, it's easy to forget that there are 4 actual kids in the middle of all of this.
That's such a good point. You know, we can analyze the legal stuff and the financial stuff, but at the end of the day, this is a family going through something really hard.
And for North and Saint and Chicago and Psalm, this isn't just a story in the news, it's their life.
Exactly. And it brings up a question that we're seeing more and more these days. How do we protect kids when their parents are super famous? Where's the line between public interest and their right to just be kids?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Especially because they didn't choose to be in the spotlight.
Right. And that's why we need to be careful how we talk about this situation. We have to remember that every decision, every headline, every post on social media, it all affects those kids.
Well said. For our listeners out there who might not be dealing with paparazzi and millions of dollars, are there any lessons from this that apply to regular families?
Definitely. I think this case shows how important it is to really communicate, especially when you're co-parenting. Even if you don't agree on everything, trying to be respectful and putting the kids first can make a huge difference.
That's something we can all take to heart, famous or not.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how we use social media, too. Maybe this is a reminder to be careful about what we share online, especially when it comes to our kids.
I think that's a great point. We don't always realize how much impact our online activity can have, not just on us, but on the people around us, too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Kim and Kanye's situation, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that even if we don't have to deal with the same level of fame, the challenges of family and co-parenting and the internet, they're things we all face in some way. And if we approach those challenges with empathy and open communication and always put those kids first, then we can make things a little bit better for everyone involved.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a reminder that even the messiest celebrity drama can teach us something important. And with that, we'll leave you to think about all of this. As always, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. If this episode got you thinking about anything, head over to our website or social media and let us know what resonated with you. We're always up for a good conversation. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup.